what's up, boss? You believe that? Hold on. Do you believe that?
Pub Nation, what is going on? I'm pumped. We finally got a defensive coordinator, and I'm gonna say it up front. I'm definitely more jazzed about this than the Pat Shurmur hire. Man, I'm just gonna come out there and say it. I'm pumped about this. My first reaction to Pat Shurmur being hired, it was more like, but I can get I can get behind it now, right? But my first reaction to this was more like, okay, I like this. This is kind of what I expected in a sense. And, the type of profile of coach that we've hired is exactly what I was thinking that we probably end up hiring, especially at this juncture in the offseason. So, man, I'm pumped about this, guys. And I think that, yes, would I call this a perfect hire or anything like that? No. And that's okay. That's okay. There's, I think, a lot of positives. There's some question marks. But let's not act like this is the perfect defensive coordinator job for anybody either, okay? There's some things that I think Robert Livingston is having to make a concession on as well. I don't think, and this might sound negative. It's not meant to sound negative. This is just saying how it is. I don't think Colorado was his first choice, and I don't think he was our first choice. But that's okay. Like this thing can still work out, and I think we can see an improved defense this year from this past year, no doubt. So let me go ahead and cut the music and say hi to you guys really quick, and then we'll get into a lot of the specifics here. But yeah, guys, there's a lot to be excited about, I think. Again, this isn't, sometimes I would see in the comments, like, we're going after Vic Fangio, we're going after so-and-so. I never really thought it would be realistic for us to grab an established, renowned NFL defensive coordinator. And as time went on, I kind of thought like, hey, this is going to be somebody who has coached in the NFL a long time, probably at the position coach level, and has wanted that shot to call plays, wants to be a defensive coordinator, but likely won't get that shot at this time to do it at the NFL level. And so they're willing to come down into college to prove themselves as a play caller, as a game planner, all of that, and then work their way back up into the NFL. Or, hey, maybe then you see a head coaching opportunity happen at the college level too. But this is kind of what I figured. Again, if a guy that I've brought up that I thought was probably a type of profile of coach that was going to end up here was Al Harris, okay? And Al Harris, coaching intern, obviously very renowned NFL player. I mean, in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, right? But in terms of coaching, was an assistant secondary coach for most of his career so far, has been the defensive backs coach for the Dallas Cowboys over the last 4 seasons, and we've seen the success and improvement. Excuse me. Got an almond stuck in my tooth. See the improvement the Cowboys have made in their secondary over the last few years and the talent that he's developed. Now, if you take a look at Robert Livingston's coaching career, honestly, he has a better resume than a guy like Al Harris. He's been doing this much longer. He hasn't. I mean, he was an assistant backs coach for 1 year. He was a quality control guy for a year. But then outside of that, I mean, since 2017, I mean, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years he's been that secondary slash safeties coach with the Cincinnati Bengals. And yeah, he's been responsible for his unit, a little bit longer than Al Harris has been doing it. But of course, Al Harris has a lot of that NFL experience from being a player to go off of. But this is something pretty interesting. And yes, like Cincinnati, their sustained success, you really just had a couple eras. You've had the success they've had with Zach Taylor, specifically in 2021 and 2022, right? And then with Marvin Lewis, with a lot of their playoff berths, but never like winning a playoff game. But he's studied under a lot of very, very interesting coaches here, and I'll get into that here in a minute. I did want to make sure that I gave a shout out, because I always forget this, to Scobuff's memes. Y'all got to be following him on Twitter. I mean, yeah, I'm fired up too. And that's how I feel about this. That's how I feel about this. I mean, we got trolled a little bit earlier today, but we take a look at the defensive coordinators that he's studied under, or he's worked under. Of course, Lou and Arumo, I think, is one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. Yes, Cincinnati had a down year this year, but I think he's pretty proven as a defensive play caller. And you've seen, hey, when they've had better health, they've had some great seasons. Okay. So Lou and Arumo, I think he's a wonderful coach to be studying under. He also was the secondary coach under Terrell Austin, who I believe now is the defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers the last few years. Paul Gunther, I'm not too familiar with him, but he was also a scout here when Mike Zimmer was here. And they had some very solid defenses there with Marvin Lewis and Mike Zimmer. And even from a scouting perspective, working hand in hand with the coaching staff during that time, I'm sure was a great learning experience. And it was to the point where, hey, he was able to elevate himself from scout to secondary coach in just a few seasons. Prior to all this, he also was a scout at Vanderbilt. And then before that was at Fulham, and then his alma mater, William and Mary. Guys, William and Mary, again, like, don't take too much stock in this, but whatever they're doing over there, they have a great track record of, I think, teaching the game the right way, because from a small school like that, for you to have, current coaches in the NFL, such as, let's make sure I name these guys right. Joe Brady. I mean, you probably heard of Joe Brady, right now offensive coordinator for the Bills, offensive coordinator for Joe Burrow in his Heisman winning year out there, or passing game coordinator rather, for Joe Burrow out there at LSU. That was great. You don't know him. Maybe you might know Sean McDermott, head coach of the Buffalo Bills. You don't know him? Well, I'm sure you definitely know, I think now with Bill Belichick gone from New England, the longest tenured head coach in the NFL, that being Mike Tomlin, coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So whatever they're doing at William and Mary, I think they teach the game the right way for you to see a handful of graduates. And those are just some of the more notable coaches that they've had that are alumni in the NFL. That's not coincidence. That's not coincidence. Whatever they're doing, it's instilling some sort of good foundation. And I mean, you look at the players that Livingston has worked with over in Cincinnati. Let's talk about, of course, how can we forget Jesse Bates? Of course, he was with the Atlanta Falcons this past year, but, primary developer of Jesse Bates, being a later second round pick, having his first all-pro year in, what was it, 2020? Yes. He was phenomenal. He's also coached, let's see, I think, man, I'm always forgetting this guy's name. Yes, their rookie, Dax Hill, who had a very good year in 2022. And then also another safety that's a very solid safety, and that is Sean Williams. So he's worked with, very good safeties. He's developed, their secondary. Now, some might say Eli Apple. Well, I think, Eli Apple's kind of a lost cause. But, I thought Eli Apple outside the Super Bowl had a pretty decent year there for the Bengals. And I think, what I was talking about was, hey, I think we go after a guy in the NFL. What I'd like to see is a younger guy because Pat Shurmur's kind of on the older side right now. So let's go after a younger guy who has his whole coaching career ahead of him, okay, that has shown some promise, that is widely regarded, as a bright mind from that position coach standpoint, and is looking to make that jump to a defensive coordinator position, at some point. And he probably was going to have to wait around longer at the NFL level. But hey, this seems like a bright opportunity. This is an exciting one. Again, it's not a perfect one, but I think that he thinks that he can come in here and you call a good defense, make a name for himself, and then level up. I mean, that's what I'd expect. And let me go back here. Yeah, I guess this summarizes his career really well here. Played safety at William and Mary, assistant coach in 2010, at Furman, and then at Vanderbilt was a scout for a year, scout for 3 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's been on staff since 2015 as a position coach. Okay, guys, the fact that you're on staff surviving multiple defensive coordinator regime changes, that goes to show that you're a very strong, capable, competent coach at that level. Now, I knew if we were going to go after an NFL guy, likely he wasn't going to have that play calling experience. And that is probably the biggest unknown about this is now that he's in charge, how's this whole thing going to go? We don't know. Would I have preferred somebody with play calling experience? Yes. But I think with the defensive coordinators that he's worked under, for the most part, they're very successful ones, even going back to his time starting with the Bengals, working with coaches like Marvin Lewis and Mike Zimmer. That's wonderful. So I was listening on a Rawhide show for a little bit. There was a guy in there talking about how like linebacker or like safeties coaches make poor defensive. I don't know where any of that came from. A handful of defensive coordinators in the NFL right now have spent time coaching secondaries. And as a Denver Broncos fan, one of the best coordinators that we've had in quite a while, Ejiro Evero, he was coaching the secondary too before, he became that guy after, Vic Fangio departed. But yeah, it's all going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But I do like, this isn't just some no-name guy. This isn't just somebody that like, I think got this job by default or anything like that. I think, again, if we had hired Al Harris, I think people would be satisfied with that. And I personally think he has a better track record and a stronger resume. He's been doing this longer at a higher level than Al Harris has been. Maybe that's a little controversial, but he's held this responsibility for a lot longer than Al Harris has. And, maybe that's what balances it out, because obviously Al Harris played in the NFL and is in the Green Bay Packers, Player Hall of Fame and all that stuff. So maybe that might kind of balance it out. But I've attached in the description of my video probably like 3 or 4 different interviews that Rob Livingston has done with some of the Cincinnati Bengals like podcast community or radio community. Very interesting. He's kind of comes across as a very no-nonsense guy, but very intelligent, very methodical, very composed. And yeah, please go check those videos out. I was listening to a lot of them, haven't gotten through all the way through all of them. But I highly recommend, if you're wanting to kind of get an idea of who this guy is, how he thinks about the game, how he approaches culture and coaching, all of that, please go watch those videos. I think that this is going to be very interesting, because one of the question marks that I also have about this whole situation is something that I've talked about with Pat Shurmur that got me on board with the Pat Shurmur hire is, hey, is he ready for this spotlight? And with Pat Shurmur, of course, it's no big deal to him. I mean, he was the head coach of the New York Giants for multiple years, dealing with that media. The spotlight isn't going to be too bright for him here. Robert Livingston hasn't had that kind of spotlight put on him before. Of course, it's been put on the Bengals. Of course, it's been put on, the head coach and the coaches that he's been working for. But, you haven't seen, he hasn't had that spotlight on him. So how is he going to handle that? I do also want to say that I've seen some comments too I threw out this evening just saying like, well, the Bengals that, they weren't very good this year. Yes, they weren't very good this year. Maybe some Bengals fans can explain that to me outside of losing somebody like Jesse Bates and going through a handful of serious injuries that they had on both sides of the ball, right? But if you look at their past, 2 years before this season, I mean, if you go and look at the rankings, their defense as well as their secondary by most metrics have them ranked within the top 10 or like within the top 15 of a lot of those different categories. And so, yeah, very productive. The year they went to the Super Bowl, I think that, depending on what you're looking at, they're like the 7th or 8th ranked defense, and their secondary was right around there too. So I think he's a guy that has shown that he can develop talent. So our safeties, our younger safeties like Jaden Milner-Jones, maybe if Carter Stoutmeyer moves over there, I think that this can be great for him. Let's hope we see Miles Slusher, Cameron Silman-Craig, Shiloh continue to take a jump in their game as well. But the Cincinnati Bengals play an aggressive style of defense, over the last few years. And so I think that's what you're going to see here at CU is them playing an aggressive style of defense. And there was a couple other tweets that I wanted to show you, and then I'll get to your comments here for a bit. Matt H., my good friend, if you're not following him, what the hell are you doing? Go do it. But he posted this screenshot of this conversation he has with Zach Seegers, NFL guy, covers the Broncos, all that. I would be. I guess the question was, should we be excited about him or feel good about this hire? I would be. Younger AFC position group coach whose unit has consistently been well coached and has performed well in high leverage moments and big games. I think the defensive staff he's a part of is one of the best and brightest in the league, especially from a game planning point of view. Wow. This is somebody who covers the Broncos, okay? This isn't a CU stan or anything like that. To get that kind of recommendation or analysis on this, I think is really interesting. So thank you for posting that, Matt H. There was another one that I did want to take a look at, I think from another one of my followers or guys that I follow. Let me see if I can find it here. Yes, here from Chase. And I'm not sure what article he pulled this from. So y'all let me know if you got it. But Lou and Arumo's base defense over the last 3 seasons has featured 4 defensive linemen on the line of scrimmage, 2 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. Again, we all know now base defense pretty much is nickel. So that's what it sounds like to me, taking off that 3rd linebacker to put in a 5th defensive back to handle that spread or 3 wide receiver sets. His defensive blitz often relies on safeties to create turnovers. Guys, I think that's our safeties. Cameron Silman-Craig tied for most interceptions in the Pac-12. We saw Shiloh have his moments of interceptions, of forcing fumbles, of big-time hits. Again, can he get these guys to play with more consistency this next year? That's going to be something that I'm going to be looking forward to seeing what happens. But I think that, this is a very solid hire, considering, again, guys, where we're at with this program, coming off of a 4-win season. I think that this is a great hire. Another thing that they're talking about on Rawhide, and Rawhide was kind of bringing this up, is, would this guy be a great DC, or why wasn't he targeted by LSU, or something like that? Listen, LSU's in a whole nother tier of right now of program quality than Colorado is. Colorado is getting there. And I think, like I was saying earlier today, is that we're still punching above our weight in terms of recruiting compared to where we should be. And I feel like this is the same way, like for this defensive coordinator hire. Um, who knows? Who knows how this hire turns out? But I think like just my assessment of the Big 12, I think you can win the Big 12 with a coach like this coaching the defense. That's just me. Now, is it going to turn out to be a total disaster? And if that happens, then hey, I'll come on here and eat my crow. But I think that he's a guy when you're talking about just does he have baseline competency to do this? I think his track record does as much as like you can draw from it because he hasn't called plays yet. We don't know how he's going to do that. But again, I know the success that he's had coaching his position groups, the money his guys have made that have been coached under him. As well as the success of the defensive coordinators and coaching staffs he's been under. I think it's safe to say that he has I think he has a good probability of being a very competent coach for us. So with that being said, thank you. This was a little long-winded. I'm going to get to some of your comments. And Bodie, appreciate the $5 super chat. Always been a day one. Thank you so much. That means a lot. And guys, if you want to ensure that, I see or react to your comment, we got over 200 people in here. Crazy. Y'all hit that like. Feel free to send me a little super chat. But I'm going to start going through here. Oh, man, there's a lot of comments to get through. But, yeah, I'm going to start scrolling. NFL guys. Tim says, honest, very underwhelming hire. Curious, Tim. Maybe I'll see what you were expecting. Because, yes, like I said earlier today, I was holding out hope for somebody like Jim Leonhard, right? But like realistically, I've said time and time again on my streams the last few weeks how I thought the defensive coordinator was going to kind of fit this type of mold. A guy who has coached in the NFL for quite a while, has had success at the position group level for many years, but still isn't getting that opportunity to call a defense yet and wants to do it. So he's willing to come down here, maybe take some concessions of not having much say over the staff, for instance, year one, and seeing how this whole thing pans out. But again, I would encourage you guys to dive in, listen to him more. I think that I think, again, guys, I'm not calling this guy the next Vic Fangio or Lovie Smith or Tony Dungy, anything like that. But I think he will be a competent coach. My hope, again, this might seem like low standards, but I mean, it is what it is. My hope is that we're not close to the most penalized football team in all of FBS this year. My hope is that we have just a couple too many men on the field penalties, throughout the season. My hope is that we're a better tackling team than we were this past year. And hey, can we get to an average ranked defense like within FBS? I think that's a huge win if we're able to do that. But we still got, in terms of a talent perspective, we still have some holes to fill in the middle of the defense, whether that's at linebacker or an interior line. And B saying, this is a very Jesse Minter, Mike McDonald type hire. He'll be with us for a couple years, man. Our DBs are going to be nasty. Yes, I would agree with that. He's here for a couple years, and then he's elevating. He's going out wherever he's going. But Jesse Minter did the same thing, going down to Michigan to work with Jim Harbaugh, and now he's back. I believe he followed Jim Harbaugh back to the NFL with the Chargers, correct? All right. But yeah, wonder how he'll deal with the growing pains of being in DC. We're gonna have to find out. Again, with watching these interviews, I kind of get the idea that he's very composed, methodical. He's not one to like freak out or anything like that. His personality could serve him well for being in the being under the microscope by the whole country. We'll just have to see. But yeah, that's one of the biggest question marks with this, and with any guy that kind of has his whole coaching career ahead of him. He or other people like him, there's a moment where they have to face this. How's he going to handle that? We're about to find out. Bodie, again, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Do you think this kind of backfired on Coach Prime? Because it feels like Livingston wasn't his first choice. What do you think? Yeah. Backfired, I guess, in terms of when Carl Reed put out that tweet like a month or two ago, we were all like real pumped. We're thinking like, man, this is going to be a big time defensive hire. But I'm under the impression whatever hire that was, it ended up not happening and ended up falling through, whoever that might have been. And we had to move on to different options. I think that Coach Prime has wanted to bring in more guys with NFL experience. So we're going to kind of see how this whole approach works. But yeah, sometimes, man, like we're raising the expectation too high, but that's just what it is. Like that is this Prime effect, man. But to be fair, I don't think CU was Livingston's first choice either. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that this thing can't be successful. But let's not act like this, is a surefire, obvious, best DC job in the whole entire realm of college football this year. I've seen some people say that, but it's totally not. You're not able right now. It seems like you're not able to have any say over the assistants in year one. You have the biggest microscope on you and nationally probably in college football, and there's still deficiencies on the roster. So this isn't a perfect defensive coordinator job. I think it's showing he's got some big cojones wanting to take this thing on, but let's not act like this was a surefire home run type of job for somebody. There's just as much risk for them taking this as there is for CU taking a risk on somebody who hasn't called plays. Yeah, but I don't know if I would call this a home run, but that's Coach Prime. We should know by now. Like, guys, I mean, going back a year ago, didn't he say Mike Zimmer and Willie Taggart were going to just walk in any day now? That never happened. Like, guys, like we got to remember this sometimes. It's like Coach Prime, man, like he's a big time motivator. He gets people hyped up, but yeah, he's also a hype man. And sometimes like what he says, it doesn't work out. That like we have to know who we're dealing with when like not everything that he says always happens. I love Coach Prime, but even Bucky was saying it on the Twitter space last week. Sometimes it's like, Dad, you don't always have to say that. But that's just who he is. That's just who he is. Nicole Carter, appreciate the $4.99 super chat. You've been with me for a long time. Appreciate the support. And thanks for sending this over. Thanks, David. I appreciate the links to interviews and your research. Will the new DC be able to bring anyone with him? Now, if I was calling the shots, I would say, yeah, if you want to bring in another cornerback coach or another linebacker coach, I'm totally fine with that. But to me right now, it comes off as like he's not going to have any say on the assistants, at least this year. I might be proven wrong. I know that a lot of us have some big time question marks around Kevin Mathis and Andre Hart coaching those positions. They're Coach Prime's guys, but I think he's giving them another year to prove themselves. I would say that probably Coach Hart, in my mind, probably has a hotter seat than Kevin Mathis does, because again, Coach Kelly didn't have to pull one of his safeties out of his position group to put at linebacker halfway through the season because none of those linebackers were ready to step up. I think that's a serious indictment on Andre Hart, as much as I love him and his personality. So my hope, if I'm trying to approach this as realistically as I can, is that, hey, we have a good year this year, an improved defense, and Livingston having earned some more trust with Coach Prime, Rick George, all them, then has the ability to swap out some assistant coaches next year if he wants to. That's just my hunch. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of how I read the situation. B. Wilk, $5. Thank you so much for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. Hopefully he has a little better sideline demeanor than the previous DC. I thought Kelly was going to pop a vein a few times. Not a good look. Yes. And I think especially that's one thing I've noticed about him, at least in these interviews, the way that he conducts himself, whether it's with the press at the Super Bowl, whether it's with these more informal interview settings, is that he handles himself very, very collected. So that's one of my hopes, is that we're not going to see a lot of those sideline outbursts. Again, you're going to get that from Coach Prime, okay? If Warren Sapp's on the staff, you'll get that from Warren Sapp, I'm sure. You'll get that from Dancy. So, again, we kind of need a good mix of those different temperaments. Hopefully, he handles himself well on the sideline, and he puts our defense in position to be successful. But thank you so much for that $5 super chat. But yeah, again, crazy how people are mad about a good DC hire. And guys, especially like, hey, it's February. Like, it's February. Have my expectations kind of changed since December? Yeah, no doubt. But I think, again, regardless of how we got to this point, February 7th, right? At the end of the day, we were making a hire on February 7th. I think all things considered, where this program is at compared to what people expect it to be at in like 2 years, I think it's a really good hire. And again, I don't know what y'all were expecting. I like this over a Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith, this probably isn't a popular take, but I think the game has passed him by quite a bit. I don't think he relates with the players. His time at University of Illinois was an absolute disaster. And I could get behind it in some sense, but there were a lot of other coaches that, I've said in the past that I would prefer over Lovie Smith. I like this. Again, you balance it out. You have a guy that's been there that I think is probably just here for this next year. We'll see. We'll see if Pat Shurmur wants to stick around longer than this, but I feel like he is kind of signing up to see this thing through with Shedeur. But you got a guy like Pat Shurmur, who is that experienced NFL play caller, NFL head coach. Is he really going to be ever hitting the recruiting trail hard? No. Is he here to like prove himself and advance himself as a coach? I'm not really sure about that. So I kind of like the balance that we have with DC, a 37-year-old guy who has just been grinding since he graduated William and Mary. Again, another small school that has put out a ton of very bright coaches, including notable ones like Mike Tomlin, Sean McDermott, Joe Brady, and didn't graduate there, but was a coach there for a short stint. Dan Quinn's another guy at William and Mary. So whatever they're doing over there, I think they prepare people to approach the game the right way. That's how I look at it. But I think I like the fact that we're kind of balancing it out. The guy that's more so at the end of his career and a guy who's like really hungry to prove himself and advance himself in his career moving forward, because he easily could have stayed as the secondary coach for the Bengals, another year. I'm sure, right? I'm sure. But he wants a new challenge. I doubt he's okay with being a career secondary coach. Like, he wants to move his way up. So I like it from that standpoint. But yeah, there's obvious question marks around this from both angles. If you're looking at it from CU's side and his side as well. And hopefully we'll see an improved defense. That's just what I hope to see. Totally disagree with this take, Truck and Chubby. Totally disagree. Again, if that was the case, you would have seen them just go ahead and elevate Dancy or Hart. I think the last time Dancy was a defensive coordinator, his defense was allowing 42 points per game. So they definitely could have taken the easy and lazy approach if they wanted to. But they went and found a guy that I think is definitely qualified to take this jump. Would I have rather had somebody that has had play calling experience? Sure. But I mean, don't act like this was just a handout for him. I don't think that's fair. Jeanette Fox, good to see you. I'm okay with this hire. It's good for the team. Yeah. Like, guys, again, we drudge everything. This is what I've noticed. Like, we always got to check ourselves. It's either you're elite or you're trash. And sometimes I feel like that's how we look at these coaching hires as well. You're either elite or trash. And it's like, guys, there's a lot more nuance to this. There's definitely some advantages and some things to get excited about this guy with. And there's very valid question marks. Very valid. But this guy has been grinding. His whole career, he's been grinding for 15, 16 years. He wants this moment. He's not somebody that's coming in here that might have been a player for a while and has never coached at high school or never coached at any level and just saying, give me a DC job because what I did in the NFL 15 years ago. He's not doing that. This guy, for the situation that he was given, I mean, not being an NFL player, played 4 years safety at William and Mary. He has gone through the gauntlet. He has earned his stripes. He has definitely earned this opportunity, but just because you earned it doesn't mean that there's not any question marks. There's plenty of question marks, but I like the idea of him being younger. Hopefully he relates to the players really well, and we'll see how he handles all this. Coach Kev says it's a strong hire. I love it. And I think, again, guys, given the situation, a 4-win team with like the worst ranked defense or second to last ranked defense in all of FBS football this past year, you guys want to act like this thing was a destination job. It wasn't. It wasn't. And I think, again, we're still punching above our weight with the coaches we're bringing in here. No doubt. James Haley, again, big time question mark. This is the biggest question mark with it. I agree with you. Hasn't called plays yet. This is what I don't agree with. Dude has to create a whole playbook from scratch. Yes, but at the same time, he's been coaching in the NFL for how many years? He's been coaching with an NFL playbook for how many years? I'm sure he has somewhat of an idea of some of the stuff he wants to run. Like, let's not act like he's learning this on the job, learning defense on the job for the first time. K Vizzy, I love this hire. I love it. I love that take. I don't never let her win. Is this neck bone? David talks about, do you agree that we can try to get value SEC D linemen for more depth to help the massacre we will face in the trenches versus Kent State? Man, I'm hoping we see more guys enter the portal. It would be, again, I've been a proponent of like, hey, If some more Michigan guys enter the portal, even if they're third string guys, can we at least just get those guys? They can help with special teams. They can help, build a winning culture in here. And yeah, again, they still might be better than a handful of guys that we have on the line right now, to be honest. So that is my hope. But right now, my expectation and what we have seen is that when we do bring guys over from SEC schools at that defensive line position, they're extremely unproven. Just played a little bit. I think. I don't think Amari McNeil played much during his time at Tennessee. Obviously, Anquin Barnes has barely played any snaps at all in his college football career. Same with Quincy Wiggins. But these guys, at least they're SEC size, right? So hopefully that should help us in the Big 12. But Chidozie Nwankwo is by far our best interior defensive lineman. Hopefully we see guys like Tarian Carter and Amari McNeil and those other guys that I named take a step up, right? Or at least some of those guys make a jump in their level of play. But still, my biggest concern for this team is the interior defensive line. I don't think we're good enough to right now beat a team like Kansas State from the defensive standpoint. I mean, I guess if we just want to air that thing out and get things into a shootout, yeah, I guess. But right now, Kansas State is one of those games that I have us losing. One of the three. At first, I didn't like it, but this is a great pickup, better than Al Harris, in my opinion. Thank you, Outsider Sports. Again, if you compare their coaching resumes, like take away the names and you look at Al Harris's coaching resume versus Rob Livingston's coaching resume, there's one that clearly looks much better. Now, again, I do think that there's a lot of value in what Al Harris brings as a former NFL great, all pro, Green Bay Packers Hall of Famer, right? But if you're just looking at the coaching career, they've both been in the NFL for the same amount of time. And Livingston has had much more responsibility for a longer point. Big Worm coming in here. Yes, I mean, this is reality. It's a risk for anybody at CU. There's a massive spotlight. Some people are going to want to take their chance and see how they do. Others, it's just not their thing. Again, I love following this, from a distance. I'm out here in the Denver Boulder area. Like, I love this thing. I love that Coach Prime gives me something to talk about every day. I am a little bit more introverted, like, even though I'm very talkative on here. So if I was a college football player, like, I'm just going to be honest, like, this type of thing, having cameras around me all the time, it's just not my thing. And that's okay. But there are going to be people where, like, hey, they're a culture fit for this. They're feeling this thing and they're going to thrive in an environment like this. Hopefully Livingston is one of these guys that thrives in this environment. Stevie Davy. Come on now. The guy just released a damn Redcon 1 partnership. What do you expect? Put down the Kool-Aid and don't dupe yourself. Again, I'm not sure exactly how to read this, but I will say is, guys, like, what were you expecting with the DC hire, guys? Like, would you have rather had somebody like Ray Lewis, who has never coached at all, calling plays? Again, there's some upside there with a Hall of Famer. I mean, he obviously ran his defenses very well, could diagnose plays, but he's never coached. He's never, like, game planned like that. There's plenty of question marks with that. I'm very curious. Like, realistically, because we weren't getting a Vic Fangio or a big time defensive mind, a Jonathan Gannon type to come out here, especially a young, promising defensive coordinator, right? They're not coming here to Colorado. So, like, realistically, what the hell? What the hell was everybody expecting? Because my expectations were, I feel like, pretty tempered, and this satisfies what I was expecting. Tremaine says, David, I disagree. Man, I'm sorry, man. I don't know what else to say. Oh, about Lovie Smith, maybe? Yeah. Again, I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and, it's just Lovie Smith had a great run, man, but I think the game passed him by. Al Harris has not called plays. Mike wasn't a splash hire, but maybe a sprinkle, but it might work. Hey, and Mike, I want to bring this up. If you can coach, right? I mean, you guys have like a 25-year-old wide receivers coach, right? Over at Nebraska. So again, it's not always about how it looks at first glance or whatever. But I think Nebraska. I forget that kid's name, but from seeing what he was able to do, seeing how he handles himself, I think he's a very bright coach. And you should see more success with the wide receivers at Nebraska this year, with them actually having a real quarterback there. But again, guys, I just want to talk about managing expectations to an extent because, um, again, you saw the big time hot coaches go to other college football programs or go to other NFL jobs. We're doing the same thing with the transfer portal. Every now and then we're able to hit on a really blue chip transfer like BJ Green or Will Shepard, right? But outside of that, like with the Washington, the Alabama, as of right now, uh, the Michigan turnover with those rosters, we're not getting any of those guys. Like they're going to other big time schools that are right there, legitimately there for a college football playoff contention or like a national title contention. If a lot of things, if CU is, they're operating closer to their peak this year, I think they're definitely a college football playoff team. If a lot of things go according to plan, if all these things really hit, if we stay healthy, all those things. But I don't know if that scenario is the most likely right now. We still have to build this thing because, okay, imagine if we have a 7-win season this year, even just 7 wins. Okay, that's going to really show the progress again. Another 3-game improvement. And again, guys, I picked them to win 9 games. So I'm just saying, like, another 3-game improvement. People are going to see the vision behind things, the whole narrative about Coach Prime leaving after Shador and Shiloh go to the NFL. That will be done. And you'll see us, I think, start to get more of those top level players, but also coaches. We still have to take those steps. I think a lot of the times we can get so excited and we believe in so much what is going on here that we can disregard actually kind of where we're at in terms of reality. The fact of the matter is that with the transfers we were able to bring in this year is still substantially better than where we should be punching at a recruiting level. And I think right now, regardless about your feelings with him, but if it's any normal 4-11 program or 4-8 program, a guy like Pat Shurmur isn't coming to coach here. Like, that's just it. Like, in my opinion, I feel like we're still punching above our weight in both of those categories, but we don't have the wins yet to demand the top talent at the player and coaching level yet. We still have to work our way up to that. Yo, Creo, good to see you, man. Question: how do you think the D line will like the hiring? Are we getting Warren Sapp? Well, I'm hoping the D line, likes it. NFL guy, seems like he's going to play an aggressive style of defense, which I think is wonderful. And yeah, hopefully we're blitzing. Hopefully we're sending 5 guys, and our secondary is coached up to where they can do well with man. Okay, they can do well in man coverage. We'll just have to see. In terms of Warren Sapp, again, I have no inside information on that. Your guess is as good as mine, y'all. I have no idea wait and see. I know Sal had surgery or something like that. I hope he's okay. I would love to see Sal Sinceri come back because, again, dealing with probably the worst defensive line talent in all of FBS football this past year, you still saw guys take some jumps, most notably Amari McNeil throughout the season. So I'd like to see Coach Sal here as well. All right, got a couple super chats. Mike, again, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Best Nebraska fan out there. You know, there's always 1% of me when I see some good Nebraska news that I can be happy for you with. So looking forward to playing y'all this year. And I need to do a Nebraska breakdown here at some point. Please comment or email me if there are any specific Nebraska YouTubers you would love for me to collab with. Paul Simmons, LSU fan, correct? If I remember correct. My memory's kind of bad. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Better an up-and-coming question mark coach than a very experienced coach making a step down and just looking for a paycheck and an early buyout. Wow. Well said. Well said. I think that's a great perspective to have with this. Well said, Paul Simmons. All right. David turning red. Oh, snap. I guess you guys got me fired up. I think I have my heater in here on 71, so I do need to turn it down. And I also got long sleeves on right now. So that probably has something to do with it. But yeah, I am pumped up. I am excited about this. I'm glad we finally have a DC. Again, some of us were getting a little nervous. Like, again, is Coach Dancy going to go from analyst to edge coach to DC? Like, that's a very clear sign that things are just going bad if that were to happen. And it's nice to see that I feel somebody who is qualified for a DC position like this. If you take away the name of Colorado and look at everything, right? If you just look at what we have, I think he's definitely qualified to be a defensive coordinator for a program at this level. Rawhide, if you're watching, man. Rawhide is garbage. I know Rawhide isn't everybody's preferred style, I guess I'll say. But Darren Jennings, man, you cracked me up. Always been a supporter of the channel. I appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, that's why I love the community that we have going on here. Everybody's got their own takes. Rawhide's got his own take. My guy Chubby, who was in the comments, he has his own takes. We have John the Liquidator. I saw he just hit 30 million views. That's absolutely insane. We got the dnvr guys. We got Steve over with the Go Route. Who else do I talk with all the time? We got Bird from Bird's Eye View. And I'm sure I'm forgetting others, but TB, like, we all look at these things and talk about these things with different style. And Chico, Colin, how could I forget about those guys? I just hope you're able to find a few voices that you like listening to or can tolerate. Because we got a lot of them out here now. Yeah, Sap's got a bad record. Yeah. Again, I understand why that's a controversial hire. So I have no idea how it's going to come out or turn out. The Waddy Way. Dave, I love the show. Appreciate the kind words, but we got some great pickups in the portal. I think you're a little too caught up in star ratings. We picked up what we wanted other than losing Lundy. And I thought we made a great substitution and bounce back, like had a great rebound recruit in Jalen Wester there. But yeah, guys, like I'm not saying I agree with you the Waddy way. Like, if you hear me talk about our recruiting class, incredibly impressed for the guys that we've been able to bring in. Again, a lot of the guys that we brought in, they were Power 5 starters this past year, right? That's wonderful. Even the guys, for instance, LeJontay Wester, wide receiver coming out here from FAU, way more productive than Jimmy Horn and Zay Weaver were last year coming in from the G5 level as well. So there's still a lot to be excited about. But if you're talking about like guys like Caleb Downs, okay, or I know there were those high-end A&M transfers. I think some of them signed with Ole Miss, right? But like those guys who are regarded as the number one guy at their position in the transfer portal, we just haven't been able to have ourselves seriously in that race yet. And I think some fans get upset with that. I'm just saying, like, no, like we're still doing very, very good. We're just not recruiting like Alabama or Ole Miss or Texas are right now. And that's okay. That's okay. But I totally agree with you, man. Eric Morris, appreciated. David and Rawhide are a license to print money together, man. Man, it's funny it's funny, man, all the friends that I've made from doing this. And yeah, like Rawhide, man, it's so funny, man. We probably talk more off the on the phone or whatever, you know, off camera than we do on camera. And, you know, he's become a really good friend. And yeah, you know, maybe I should collab with Max. I've seen him in here a little bit. Buffs Nation Daily also does a lot of live discussions. Thanks for that, Billy Hughes. I've tuned into a few of his shows and I've seen him in here as well. Yes, I need to do that. I need to add him to my list for sure, as well as Mad Dog. I've wanted to have a conversation with Mad Dog as well. But yeah, Coach Kev, we're watching Rawhide every night. Every night. It's my late night TV. Bodie, good to see you. All right, guys, I'll just go for a little bit. Yeah, I need to find Mad Dog on Instagram. I you know, that's what I need to do. You guys are making me laugh, but I'm not going to pull up some of those comments. Hey, Kenny, I like this. Prime understands defense and has researched his new guy. He's going to be exactly what Prime wants. Yes. I do think Rawhide's channel brought up, you know, whether it was Rawhide or somebody else in the panel brought up, you know, is this guy going to be able to challenge Coach Prime? You know, does he have too many yes men on his staff? I think that was a fair criticism of this past year. I don't know. You know, you can kind of look at it two ways. Did he give his coaches like too much leash and agency, or, you know, was he kind of telling them more what to do from a game plan perspective? And, you know, we're going to pass it way more than we run, even though we got a bad offense. I don't know. I don't know. Only people inside the building can answer that. So yeah, I don't really know, but I'm hoping that Robert Livingston is the right man for the job, that he's going to provide, you know, good communication and good collaborative nature with Coach Prime, and be able to challenge him in certain ways. Again, if you just surround yourself with people that you just agree with, man, then you're never gonna likely reach your potential. So that's my hope, is that this is going to be a good working relationship. They might need to take some time to figure out how to make it the best working relationship, but that's the same with any new job, right? And Billy Hughes, I think CJ Hurd is going to FAU from last I heard as well, even though his two choices were to UCLA and Colorado. But I did hear that as well. And that's what I would expect. Oh, see, yeah, you're even saying there's a crystal ball out now. Yes. All right, guys, I'm going to tune this thing, or I'm going to turn this thing off or whatever, you know, settle this thing down, land this plane, whatever. I kind of have those Ricky-isms from Trailer Park Boys where I try and say those things, but I always end up screwing them up, you know, so to speak. But hey, guys, thank you so much for coming in here. Chat was fire and hilarious as always. Y'all got me fired up. But yeah, again, um, yeah, but be sure to consider subscribing if you haven't. Um, oh man, hey David, you could eliminate a lot of redundant questions if you introduce your subscribers to this cool thing called Google Warrants app. It's basically banned from Colorado. A lot easier said than done, Steve G. A lot easier said than done. But yeah, if you've listened to the show a little bit, you kind of know how I feel about that whole thing, or my lack of idea of actually what the hell's happening there. So like I say, guys, just sit back and enjoy the roller coaster ride, man. This thing is just enjoy it, man. It's crazy how we talk about this every day, but I'll be back with a part 2 of my film review on Yakiri Walker, our center coming in from University of UConn. And yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with that. So please consider subscribing, hitting that like on the way out if you like my style. But appreciate you guys as always, and Sco Buffs. Appreciate it, Steve G. Appreciate it, Steve G. You have a great night.